Welcome, Divine Goddess, on this new episode on Chloe Tremor Therapy Podcast. I am delighted to have you here. Oh, here's my cat saying hello. Can I record, please? So, today's topic, well, I'm Chloe, first and foremost. I'm your host, holistic therapist, founder of Chloe Tremor Therapy. And today's topic is going to be about numbing and, you know, different ways that we numb and ways that are not necessarily, uncommon ways we numb and ways that we don't necessarily hear a lot about. So numbing is any form of disconnection from our emotions. Coping, this can be in the form of coping mechanisms, but also, simple disconnection. So obviously you might already be, familiar with, coping mechanisms, mental health disorders, addiction, all of those. So mental health disorders are coping mechanisms, addictions are coping mechanisms, and also other forms of compulsive behaviors. For instance, anger, violence, and things like that. So coping mechanisms, are a way is our attempt to numb, to disconnect from our emotions to cope with underlying trauma. But there's also a lot of ways that, might have been normalized in our society of numbing and might be indicator of, underlying trauma. Again, we all have different bodies as well. It's not because I wanted also to to clarify that, it's not having a mental health disorders or suffering from addiction doesn't mean we're weaker than others. We all have a different language. We all have different bodies that have a different language, okay? So some of us might take the direction of addiction. Some of us might, create coping mechanisms such as mental health disorders and compulsive behaviors. And others, might not develop necessarily mental health disorders, but have the same exact trauma, for instance. But because we have a different family karma, we have a different family story. Some of us may develop coping strategies that are unique to themselves, but having mental health disorders, even physical, health issues, or any form of coping mechanisms or suffering from addiction doesn't make anyone weaker, okay? So, with that being said, so it's not because you don't have a full-blown mental health disorder or physical manifestation of trauma, such as chronic illnesses, and different types of physical manifestation of trauma, doesn't mean that you don't have trauma and you might be numbing, in a way that you didn't realize, was actually numbing. So this is what I wanted to talk about today, because I think we often hear we often emphasize and put our focus, whether that is in the therapeutic community, mental health field, or coaching field, we tend to focus on, when it comes to trauma, full-blown mental health disorders. But there's also other ways to numb, aside from developing an actual coping mechanism. So, and this shows that, and there's trauma, still underlying trauma, and it's important to talk about it. So, one of the ways that, you might be coping with trauma, and other ways of numbing is one of those, pathway, neural pathway that you might have created, which is something that I call, avoidance, emotional avoidance. So what emotional avoidance is going from, and it's something that I've experienced myself. So it's going from, um, feeling the tip of an emotion, or, your nervous system recognizing some form of anxiety, trauma, uncomfortable emotion, and going straight into disconnecting from it, suppressing it and in denial of it. So that might look like, um, you know, uh, well, maybe there's certain situation where you might feel fear, but you don't authorize yourself feeling fear. And, a lot of men are socialized this way. So it's not just women. Men are often socialized this way as well, I wanted to say. And so you go from, I'm feeling all those fears, I'm feeling all those insecurities or whatever. And you go straight into they don't affect me and I don't feel them. So this might look like, oh, well, when I'm in this situation, yeah, no, I don't feel it doesn't bother me at all. I don't think about those things, or, you know, um, I just don't think about it. Often you will hear that sentence, like, I just don't think about it. Well, that's the thing. Um, Usually this is a sign of avoid emotional avoidance, and recognizing deeper emotions that you might have, and also, giving yourself the opportunity to grow. So this is a very common, um, numb strategy and avoidance strategy. You also, can have things like exercising a lot, um, you know, um, being hyperactive. So I'm not going to talk about neurodivergence here, just or hyperactivity, is an actual quote unquote condition, with which has like a range of colors. But I'm talking about one, numb strategy. So this one might be going into hyperactivity, meaning avoiding being still and going into cleaning, like kind of nervously cleaning, nervously being active. Um, this is a way of coping with, emotions, with, again, a lot of men are, have that type of coping strategy where when, you actually shut down and your focus goes into having control on something. So whether that is your body, going to the gym, feeling like you need to control your body, feeling like you need to control your surrounding, and very much cleaning, very much being active, but to the point that, you might not be connected to your body's signals. For instance, your body's signals of, oh, I want to rest, so you kind of disconnect from your actual needs, and go into this coping mechanism. It's always coping with trauma in this behavior where you're actively needing to clean, needing to go to the gym. And then it's like your surroundings makes you, if things are not clean, or if like you cannot stay still, basically, because you're feeling a lot of discomfort. So this is also another emotional avoidance strategy, and a coping mechanisms of trauma as well. So on my own journey, I used to have both, and I have learned through different strategies over time as well as I healed. Because again, as a reminder, we are on a healing journey, but we can be both healing and still dealing with trauma, okay? We're still dealing with some level of trauma. So for instance, on my own journey, what it looks like is I used to have CPTSD. I used to have full-blown mental health disorders, which left, but I still had sometimes, I could be prone, for instance, to some level of anxiety, or from time to time, I still had some level of, feeling down. It was not full-blown depression, but it was like, kind of a cycle that would come back, but it was not debilitating like an actual, like I used to have. So this is, so you might be, even if we are on our healing journey, we might have still some symptoms, physical symptoms, mental health symptoms that, we're still holding some level of pain that is ready to be acknowledged and released, okay? So, um, so I had both of those strategies at one point, and and first of all, the first one, so that was before I started embracing my healing. So that was more of, on my earlier journey. Um, but I know that this was very, this was very common on my journey, and I think I did feel this way as well after my Kundalini awakening. I'm sure it definitely happened to me as well. Um, but basically, I know that when I was a teenager, when I was yeah, early in my younger years, I know that I would always be, emotionally avoidant, so I was very much emotionally avoidant, and every time something would bother me, I would just not think about it. I would just not acknowledge it. um, I would never be upset about anything, when there were so many reasons, for me to be upset, and those moments where things would bother me, or I would um feel fear, whatever it was, I would just go straight in denial, like completely disconnected from my emotional world. And slowly, after going through my spiritual awakening, and I started to heal despite, my resistance, and then meeting medicine women, shamans, and being like inspired and taught by them, discovering a new perspective, allowing myself to be vulnerable, allowing myself to let go, and to one step at a time open myself up, um I at time from time to time, this can come back, like not wanting to feel, but also, like, I think one of the things that motivated me before in my younger years to suppress those emotions was also like societal pressure. And I think that, societal pressure does play a huge role in us suppressing emotions. And I think that, for instance, when you're successful, or, are held to certain standards, which I used to be, of living, and just having to keep this facade for everyone that you're successful. It's like you cannot, especially if you're when you're successful, you cannot, um, you have a lot of pressure in terms of being a leader, being strong, and so if you allow yourself to feel your emotions in our society, you're considered as weak, and you're not considered as a leader. Like, vulnerability is really very much seen as, something that makes a human being weak. And so, I think one of the things that used to motivate me to suppress as well, even after my Kundalini awakening, when I started, uh, doing coaching and going in, studying coaching, I think one of the things was also a lot of societal pressure, because vulnerability is still seen in our society as weak. And so the more we also, are successful, the more difficult it becomes for us to be actually vulnerable if we care about others' opinion, obviously, um so I'm here to tell you that vulnerability is a strength. Honestly, like, I cannot um I cannot say it, you know um like, I will keep saying it, like, vulnerability is strength. I think the moment I started allowing myself to break down and to actually be a human being was the moment that actually I regained a lot of my power. I was able to start setting better boundaries, because also, you can keep a facade, but your reality is still gonna reflect if people take advantage of you, if people feel too comfortable with you, if people don't respect you, and you tend to encounter a lot of the situation where people are not valuing you the way they should, and the way you deserve. And that has to do with, your vibration and emotional trauma that you're still suppressing. because that's what also like our reality is always reflecting to us, you know? So, you know, being vulnerable and breaking down allows you to actually also create a life where you experience being respected. You experience people respecting you because your vibration just demands respect, you know? And personally, once I started breaking down and actually feeling and actually being vulnerable and just putting that in the center of my life and allowing myself to be vulnerable, to be held, to seek support when I needed. Um, then I started being able to actually grow and to ground myself, to be more grounded and to be in another frequency, you know, and it keeps getting better. And for instance, in terms of boundaries, I know that I used to struggle so much with boundaries, like and not just about speaking my boundaries and assessing my boundaries, just even having people, attracting people who just didn't respect boundaries a lot at all, you know, and kind of struggling cutting ties with people who were just, you know, mean and just jealous, envious, like had no good interest, no good intentions towards me, you know? And not having them influence my life too much or influence everything I did as if I had to prove something, you know? And so once I started to break down and to heal my trauma and feel my trauma and just be in that very vulnerable space, I started growing stronger and more confident, and also being able to actually cut people off my life without it being too difficult, for instance, you know, and also manifesting different outcomes and different reality. Um, and as well, like, you know, being in a space where I create around me a support system that respects me, you know, that lifts me up and is respectful of me and not here to sabotage anything, you know? So that's why I personally will keep saying like vulnerability is there's so much power in that because you give back also like the pain that you're holding to the perpetrator or the situation, like you regain your power as well as a human being, as a woman, whatever, you know, were your experience. But I know that me breaking down and going back into that shell of that abused child, of that scared little child, was so freeing to me because I needed, you know, for instance, in my own journey and my own story when I was a child, no one, except maybe one adult, no one noticed that I was like in an abusive situation. No one came to help me. No one noticed me. No one saw me. And having someone holding that space for me and being able to break down and being able to just, you know, being heard and having that part of me heard because she was never heard, you know, never acknowledged, was so freeing, you know. I was seen, I was held and seen. So it's very important to like vulnerability and breaking down is so crucial if you want to, you know, grow as a human being and experience life from, you know, being happy or close to happiness, you know, close to perfect happiness, bliss, because there's so much we came here to heal, but starting to, you know, changing your circumstances that are not what you want and you feel like you deserve. This goes for manifesting love as well, a partner that, you know, you have intimacy and connection with. Well, if you don't have intimacy with yourself, if you're, you know, you have a lot of blocks around self-intimacy, self-pleasure, and not being able to focus on you, or being, you know, being prone to toxic relationships and struggling, you know, to actually leave a toxic relationship, for instance, and choosing you, you know, this has to do with a lot of trauma. So needing to break down and needing to be vulnerable and needing to seek help or support from a friend, whatever, someone who can hold that space for you, and you being vulnerable with what is keeping you in whatever situation you're in or reality that doesn't make you happy, you know? So yeah, numbing is something that, that we have a lot of um coping mechanism of trauma and ways to numb. And um it's sometimes normalized, but I personally think we should be able to acknowledge that it's really important, because that's where the growth lies. And same for being hyperactive and needing to be of movement and not still, and struggling to be still. This also can be, one of the symptoms of CPTSD, one of the symptoms of, autism, hyper being neurodivergent, ADHD, but isolated from that, if you tend to have to go into a very frenetic, yeah, a very aggressive movement and needing to be very active, or having too much overthinking, this is always a sign of underlying trauma. And I know that I've experienced that myself, from time to time. I had those moments where I would, have this need to be in movement. And sometimes, I would let myself, um, I would let myself be in that overactive state because it felt safer. But it's also a way to acknowledge, to be conscious. Okay, I have something I can dive deeper in, and maybe I can seek support and explore that with someone or with a friend. And but just always talking, being vulnerable and talk to someone about it, not in the sense that, oh, I have an issue, but more in a curiosity state of mind. That's also something that I really want to clarify. Diving deeper, acknowledging you have trauma doesn't mean that you're weak or that you're broken. It's just an opportunity for growth. So I like to always explore, you know, I always like to explore, and always like to explore myself with curiosity. And that's the same way I approach, things with my clients. We explore things with curiosity. It's an opportunity for growth, to become the woman you desire to be, you are, and it's a very positive path to take. And it's not, as society tries to make it, something that is bad, meaning like you cannot fit in society, you're too weak. Like society, like the society we live in, the world we've created is just, mad and not even interesting when you look at it. There's so much lack of aliveness, lack of juice. Like we cannot, sexuality is repressed, emotions are repressed, being free dancing is repressed. Like it's not really a fun, world when you think about it, right? Especially for women. So, um, why not approach, like, why listen to society? Why not approach exploring yourself deeper? And if, exploring your traumas, if something has come up, with curiosity and childlike curiosity, and just viewing it as a very positive thing, an opportunity to get to know yourself better and to grow into a closer version of who you truly are. So when I would have those hyperactive situation, you know, I would just embrace it and be like, okay, an opportunity to go deeper, and if I need to, for the moment, to be very active because it's hard to cope with, like, the trauma is hard to cope with, well, I embrace it totally, like. And I know that today, some time to time, I can feel that urge to, like, to do a lot of things all at once. And if I feel like, oh, maybe like this, maybe a huge trauma has come up and I need to, like, cope with it, and it's very hard, um, I might go into active hyperactivity in that way. But I know that now I have tools as well to be able to, remain still in that moment and explore within, which is why I created Abundancia as well, where I teach you, many coping strategies and tools, so that you can also, handle um those moments where trauma comes up, and how to explore trauma within you, so that you can have at least a clear idea on what you're dealing with. And if you feel like you can take it a step further and actually processing the trauma alone, which is, why I create Abundance. And I think, it's for me being able to get to a place where I can like process my own trauma and not needing necessarily like a trained therapist to help me, um and just having all the strategies needed to be able to process trauma on my own, although part of processing trauma requires a support system, obviously. um but being able to not have to go necessarily to to a therapist, and just being able to process out on my own has been life changing, especially when you're dealing with trauma, because I personally believe we we all have a different experience, and a therapist might not always have the right words if, a conventional therapist, because my issue with, conventional therapy is that a lot of therapists just are not on their healing journey. They are not on their trauma healing journey, or they might have a therapist themselves, but they're always stuck in talking about the past and never actually processing through the body the trauma, and today we do have like a lot of findings like somatic work in terms of, movement and other approaches and therapies and complementary therapies to help us like, to help people, and help us like process trauma. But I have honestly, in my all the times and all the years I've been on this life in this life so far, I have struggled a lot to find like never found someone who could actually help me process trauma, And the only time that, support has helped me process trauma was because, I had the compassion, the support, but not necessarily, the tools and the right tools to actually help me process the deeper stuff. So this is why, like, through my own research and through my own experience and through my own like intuitive experience, I found a way to actually process trauma with tools that I've learned as well, through my own trainings, but also through my own experience. And that's why I wanted to create this course to help, to help you be able to do that also on your own, and being able to, to approach healing trauma with a childlike curiosity, like it's something very positive. And again, we are in a society, every single person has trauma. Like there's not even a doubt on that. Like everyone, even in the most loving families, you still have at least like trauma from colonization, from our disconnection from Mother Earth. Like there's at least that, and usually, even in loving families, you have probably a story in the family, probably family secrets as well. Like, so there's, you can be a very loving human being, still hold a lot of trauma, due to your parents' decision, whatever, like not necessarily directed to you. So it's not even a question to think like, oh, what does having trauma means? Who does it make me? Am I weak? Like, no, everyone's. The only thing is that some are better at hiding it than others. That's all. Like, some are better at hiding it, or like, it's not that they're even better, but like, there's so much in denial of it. They're just ignoring the signs, and until like, they break down. And honestly, don't think for a second that people are not breaking down over and over again today. Like, um, people are slowly all breaking down in society. So, and those who like are not breaking down, they're very deep into denial and actually living a false reality and creating a false identity, and being in the role and abusing people. So like, so that's why I mean by we all have trauma. So if you recognize yourself in those coping strategies and that emotional avoidance, um this, just being aware of it and just recognize it is already healing. It's already a first step that you're taking, and a first, like, you're already embracing healing as you recognize that. Once we step out of denial and we step in being honest with ourselves and recognizing those signs, that's when we manifest, we find solutions, we can go search for what we need. Follow your intuition first and foremost. That's the one advice I will give you. Like, follow your intuition. Once you're aware of what, your coping strategy here. And maybe it's out of control, if it's out of control, make sure to seek professional support. But if you feel like it's not that it's out of control, but you recognize it, well, you can either, make your own research, do your own thing, find a therapist if that, that resonates with you, a coach, whatever, someone you resonate with. Or you also have my online course, which will enable you to gain tools and have tools and therapeutic tools, tools that therapists will give you, so tools to be able to process, and also to cope and process at the same time your traumas, and also, like, understand as well, like, gain emotional intelligence, which I personally think is like crucial. And so, yeah, you have my online course. And then if you feel like, you're ready to, you prefer having support, being very efficient, like, you don't necessarily feel like you have the time to go through a course, and you're more like the type, like, I want the thing to be done, basically, and have have a deep transformation, and not have to think about it, not have to study it, then you can apply to work with me. I have different types of packages. Usually they're 5-month packages minimum. And so you have the link in my bio below in the description, and you just need to, fill it the formula, and I will contact you within a few days, so that we can have a consultation, see how I can help you, if we're a right fit, and then we'll move from there, having you process your trauma and going through a deep transformation, which I personally love those moments as well. Like, I live for my clients' transformation. I live to see them become like the woman they are. It's just one of my, like, it's the best reward for me. Honestly, it's the best reward for me. It's the reason why I do what I do. So I just love seeing that and witnessing that. It's just, I feel so fortunate. So yeah, thank you for listening until the end, Goddess. If you want more resources as well on healing, on connecting with your emotions, I have also listed in my description all my freebies. You have a prayer to Mother Earth. You have my free guide to how to start meditating. You also have my free webinar, How to Heal Trauma, if you want to dive deeper into trauma and understand trauma. This is free as well. If you feel like you want to also to connect with like-minded women and talk more about those topics, I have a free community and membership that is also link in my description below, where we connect. You have the ability to connect with women from all over the world, and on which we share about, what we're going through, and different topics like that together. And this also gives you access to all my freebies. So, and if you purchase one of my freebies, you'll be automatically in that community as well. Like, if you take one of my freebies, it's free, obviously. So, okay. So in the meantime, sending you much love, Goddess. Keep rising and keep shining. Sending you much love. Bye.